The World Economic Forum, that gathering of billionaires, leaders, elected and unelected, an assortment of Batman villains, is underway. And there is no debate amongst the elite. No, there's just a lot of preaching, self-congratulation and unhinged ranting. Let's hear from climate change grifter Al Gore.
Creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea level and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1 billion in this century. Look at the xenophobia and political authoritarian trends that have come from just a few million refugees. What about 1 billion? We would lose our capacity for self-governance on this world. We have to act.
1 billion climate change refugees? Really, 1 billion? And here's another chronically wrong character.
We, select group of human beings, because of whatever touched us at some point in our lives, are able to sit in a room and come together and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, it's so almost extraterrestrial to think about.
They're very special people, just ask them. The World Economic Forum has in recent years backed many a diabolical scheme, from Sri Lanka banning the use of fertilisers, well, that ended well, didn't it, to backing crypto conman Sam Bankman-Fried's ventures. Joining me now is Douglas Murray, Associate Editor of The Spectator and the best-selling author of The War on the West. Douglas, do we take the World Economic Forum seriously? Is it a threat against democracy and prosperity, or is it a clown show?
Well, I think it's increasingly become a clown show, because in recent years it's become clear that the World Economic Forum likes to hold itself out as this amazing gathering of extraordinary figures who get to think about our collective future. In actual fact, it's become clear over recent years in particular, this really isn't where the real discussion is. I mean, you know, if you're going to set up a forum to discuss the future of the planet, you would, for instance, need people who had different opinions from one another. Davos doesn't do that. They just have the mono Davos opinion. And actually in recent years, a lot of people have been sort of drifting away from the forum in the realization that it's just not where the thinking is. It's a forum where everybody has thought the same thing for years now. I don't see it as a threat to democracy. I don't think that the World Economic Forum is that. That's to give it far too much credit. It has an enormous influence, that's for sure. And really it's because there's a sort of groupthink, which, as you well know, Rita, is one of the problems in our politics in all of our countries. You know, you elect a leader of the left or a leader of the right, and effectively you've got the same sort of squishy Davos type. It's a great shame that it has this influence, but I think the influence will keep on being interrupted as more and more people realize that these elites are gathering, having a discussion that's increasingly divorced from the reality that the rest of us live in.
Absolutely divorced, and no accountability. No matter how many bad ideas that they float and get implemented, there's no learning coming from that at all. Now,
look at the two people we've just seen them, Mr. Kerry and Mr. Gore. What have they got in common? Oh, they were rejected at the ballot box. They were rejected at the ballot box by the American people. So they go to Davos and explain why. I mean, America isn't a big enough canvas for them. They've got to do the planet.
I think they both lost to George W., didn't they? That's something else they share in common. Now, Jacinda Ardern, she enjoyed worldwide media adulation and one of the longest political honeymoons in recent history. But finally, the New Zealand people woke up to her disastrous reign. And Douglas, I've got to say, you were one of the first to see through her empty moral posturing. You called her style of leadership performative caring.
Yes, that's right. I've thought this ever since I first really laid eyes on her. I think there's a phoniness about the woman. I think there's a fakeness. You can see it in her weird facial tics and gestures, her weird laughs, and her weird overdone pseudo-compassion. You can see it even in this resignation speech where she sort of... I thought it was sort of pretty pathetic, actually. A lot of people say, oh, well, she should be praised for her vulnerability and for showing vulnerability and much more. Here's the thing about Ardern. She came in by presenting herself as this completely new being, among other things, a female leader, because of course we've never seen that in the world before. but the right type of female leader, one who leads with compassion and care and a sweet smile to everyone and every child. And the thing is, actually, when it came to the test, she was far from compassionate towards the people of the country she was ruling. She was far from compassionate when she put the people in New Zealand through lockdown after lockdown. On one occasion, because there was a single case of COVID identified in the country. So bang, New Zealand goes back into lockdown again. She wasn't compassionate about all of the troubles that the peoples of the country went through those benighted years. You know, so yes, I called her out early for it, and and I stand by that. I think there's a fake form of compassion in the modern era where you do all the right shibboleths, you know, you do all the right caring noises, and actually as a result you can get away with monstrous things, which is what she did. So I'm very glad to see her go. I've got no pity for her, as she now tells us she's got no fuel in the tank and she's kind of burnt out. You know, she should think of the people she burnt through among the population of the country, and she's only going now because she really knows she's going to lose the upcoming election. And from now on, of course, she will be able to go to Davos every year and continue the honeymoon.
Well, that's it. I mean, people around the world, I think, really, they see the media coverage. They don't see just how inept her government has been and how much they have failed, not just in COVID policy, but everything from housing to race relations. Now, to China, the weakness against China, even through COVID, was shocking. Joe Biden, here's another inept leader that the media can no longer protect. Even CNN is now reporting on Biden meeting with his dodgy son's business partners whilst he was vice president. We've known that since 2020, but CNN is finally reporting it after a horror week for the president, where we've learned that on at least 4 occasions his lawyers located classified documents he's not supposed to have. The FBI is treating Biden very differently to other similar breaches, but despite the protection racket from the FBI and the Justice Department, the American people want accountability. A new poll shows that around 2/3 of Americans favour Congress investigating the classified documents found at President Biden's home and post-vice presidential office. And that includes a majority of Democrats, surprisingly, 52% of Democrats. Douglas, only 16% of Americans oppose such an investigation. Will Biden survive this? Will he be the candidate in 2024?
I think not. I think there's a very interesting story here. I think that it shows, you know, he was very critical of Donald Trump after the Mar-a-Lago raids. Either it's clear what classified documents are or it isn't. And if it isn't clear, then maybe that explains why Donald Trump had them and Joe Biden had them and had them sitting around in one of his garages beside one of his cars and in a think tank that he runs that no one knew he had, and at his office, at his home, and so on. But I think it is actually clear, it should be very clear, that a document with top secret on it, for instance, briefings about relations with Britain, Ukraine, Russia, China, and more, shouldn't be just like left around in the garage. So here's what I think is going on, Rita. I think this is a Democrat. If you look at the sources that this has been leaked to, I think this is an internal Democrat effort to stop Biden running in the next presidential election. Yes. There are a lot of Democrats who want to get him out of the way. He would be in his mid-80s at the end of his next term. He's, you know, plenty of people in their early 80s and mid-80s are sprightly, but Joe Biden ain't among them. And so I think this is an internal Democrat effort to get him out of the way now. The big question then for the party is what they replace him with, because the bench is not a good one.
It is a very shallow talent pool indeed. And you're right, this initial discovery was made before the midterms, but nobody knew about it until the midterms were done and dusted, and then the convenient leak comes around. And also, what do you think about the FBI's handling of this? The fact that they didn't even opt to be there when Biden's lawyers were looking at these documents. You would think that would be, at a minimum, what they would do, given that they raided Trump's residence.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Americans are just going to be unhappy about that double standard, simple double standard. Yes, it's Biden's lawyers have been discovering this, among other things. You know, Biden's house hasn't been raided by the FBI. Biden reassured a press conference earlier this week that he said to Steve Doocy of Fox, who actually managed to get in a question to the president. That's very rare these days. He actually gets one and answers one. The president assured the American people that it wasn't like the top secret documents had just left by his car in the street. They'd actually been left in a car that was locked in a garage. And as you and I know,
that's okay then.
There's no way that the Chinese or anyone else can get into a locked garage. I mean, that's the last thing they can do. And of course, this was also in the house where his son Hunter was living. And of course, as we know, Hunter wouldn't ever be any security threat at all, because he's always been in the right state of mind. So actually, I think that a lot of Americans think there's a double standard here. The FBI raided Melania Trump's closet, and day by day we discover Biden's people handing over top secret documents that just happen to be sitting by the car in the garage that the Chinese can't get into, but Hunter Biden can. So I think that a lot of people will dislike this double standard. As I say, either it's clear what are top secret documents or it's not. And if it is clear, then I think people will just want fairness in the treatment of the two candidates who've been found breaking these rules.
Absolutely. Unlike Donald Trump, Vice President Biden wasn't able to declassify any of those top secret documents. Douglas Murray, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Pleasure as always. Thank you.